that is related to the Kubernetes, right? We have discussed the architecture, we have discussed the basic unit is pod, right? We have discussed that whenever you are creating a um, pod, it is basically having a container inside it. So we discussed that there will be a cluster, right? So there will be a cluster, and in that cluster we will have some machines, and one of them must be a master machine, which is also known as control plane, right? So the one which I have set up environment, so it has control plane and it is having the worker nodes. So worker nodes are those machines where actually the containers get created. And now if I say that I want to create a pod, so pod will be created on this pod network layer. So during the installation, I used a plugin which is the Flannel plugin. So there are many plugins are there, right? Like Calico is one of them. So they have their own advantages. So they are having their dedicated portion, which is for the um, for the Kubernetes only. So Kubernetes also recommends that we need to use these plugins, right? If you see AKS, if you see EKS, or you know any cloud-based environment, so they are using these uh, plugins only, right? So with the AKS, you can use Calico, right? There are some plugins which are inbuilt in the Kubernetes also. So if you want to use that network solution for pod network, you can use that one also. But as I mentioned, Kubernetes also recommends that we need to use these uh, uh, these plugins. Okay. So now, uh, now, uh, so what we will do now? Our setup is ready, and I fixed those issues as well. So I will connect to those machines, my machines. So I will go to my master node. And I'll go to my worker one, and I'll go to my worker two also. Okay. So these are in the starting state, that's why. So now you can see here that these machines are getting started. So if I remove this, right. Okay, so looks like these get started. Let me just, okay, worker one is having no trouble actually. It is giving some message where it says that it is not supporting this VirtualBox, whereas it supports. I don't know why it gives that error, but you can see that worker one is also connected. Worker two, it is asking the password, and I'm giving the password. Now all these three machines are in the network that I have mentioned in during the installation, and also these machines are uh, now connected through the pod network, right? So how do you know that it is connected with the pod network? So whenever you are running, first time any command, for example, if you restart your cluster, so this is a cluster, okay, where we are having the master node and the worker node, and all the commands will be executed on the master node only. So this is my cluster, and as I mentioned, everything will be executed on the master node. So I'm I have installed everything as a root user. So I'm logging as a root user, and I will execute all the commands by using root user. So master node, it is required. Worker node, it's up to you, means you want to log in as a root user or not. Underneath of this Kubernetes, the container runtime which we have used, that is container D, okay, not the Docker. So during the steps, I have also mentioned that we are installing a container runtime which is container D on all these machines. Okay, so if I say Docker hyphen version, so Docker is not there. Okay, container D is there. Right. So now, first I want to check. Let me clear the history. History minus C. First, what I want to do, I want to check that all the nodes are in ready state, because until unless these are not in the ready state, we cannot proceed, because we want to create the pods or containers that should be created on these worker nodes and through master node. So all should be in the ready state. So I'll say kubectl get pods, get nodes. So you can it will run a query, and you can see my all the nodes are in the ready state. This is master node, which is also known as control plane. These are the worker nodes, and we are using version 3 1.35.2. This version we are using, right? So our machines are ready, and now we move to the next part. And then one more thing, before proceeding, the error which I have I have received after installation or after rebooting my system. So that also we will check. So kubectl get ns namespace, and there is a namespace which is called the kube-flannel. So this is the namespace which is basically required for the network or pod network point of view. So we need to see all the things are good in this particular namespace, especially the pods. So I'll say kubectl get pods under the namespace, which is this one. Okay, now these are in the running state. Okay, so if it is in the running state, then it means it is fine. Okay, it doesn't matter that it get restarted 6 times, 2 times, but ultimately it is in the running state, so that is a good thing. Right, now now we can start our, if I say our means pod creation or other things. So if I say kubectl get pods, let me see, is there any pod? There is one pod which is in the running state. If I say kubectl delete pod and pod 1. Right. Now, first what we will do, we will see the application deployment. Deployment on Kubernetes using pod. First, we will see the how we can deploy the application as a pod. Pod is the basic unit of your Kubernetes. If you see in the Kubernetes, everything is moving around the pod. Like in Docker, Docker container is the one which is a basic or atomic unit. So in Kubernetes, it is pod, right? So we will, whenever we are talking about application deployment, when we are talking about how to access our application, so everything is moving near to this or moving around this pod only. So now this is so now when we are creating the pod, so we can create the pods especially in 2 ways. One is by using commands, Kubernetes commands, and second is by using manifest file, which is nothing but the YAML file, YAML or YML file. Okay, so these are like this. So first we will see how to create the pod by using command. Knowledge of command is very much required whenever you are doing any day-to-day activities, or if you are appearing for the CKAD or CKA exam or any Kubernetes exam, because sometimes what happens that you are having uh, a scenario-based question, right? So in CKAD or CKA, all the questions are scenario-based, and you need to execute some commands. Okay, you need, maybe they will ask that change service account. They may ask that change the image of the pod, right? So if you have the knowledge of the command, it will be very easy for speed up those things, right? So it saves a lot of time during the exam, and also it's a good practice into your day-to-day activities also. So, right. So let us understand the pod. So what I'm going to do, I will create a pod, okay, and I will deploy my application. So as of now, if you are having your own Docker image, you can use that one. But I don't have any Docker image at this moment. I have, but we'll take the example of the web server, which is nginx. So nginx is a Docker image from Docker Hub. So we will download this Docker image. So what will happen when I create this pod? It will be created on top of the pod network, and then it will be created as a container. Means because nginx is a container, right? Nginx is a Docker image which will be created as a container inside the pod. So ultimately the container will be created. So that container will be created um, on some worker node. Okay. So let us try that. So the command, which is the kubectl run command to create the pod, right? So now if I say kubectl uh, kubectl run and hyphen help, it will show all the commands which are related to the Kubernetes run. If I say kubectl run and hyphen help, so you'll see that there are many commands are there, right? So you can see there are some examples are also given here. If you see kubectl run nginx image nginx, so this is the pod name. Okay, they had given the same name as the image name, but and then we are having the image nginx. There are some more options. For example, you want to specify that my application is running a specific port, right? So like nginx by default, it runs at port number 80. So no need to mention port and then 80 because that is default. But consider your application is running on port number 81. Then you can mention port and 81. Okay, so that we can do. Now, there are some other examples are there, like we can set the environment variable inside my container. I can also set the namespace, means these are the environment variables only, right? Env. So let us see these examples one by one. So first what I will do, I will create a container with a Docker image nginx, not a container. I'll say container will be create a pod, and inside the pod there will be a single container which is with Docker image, that is nginx, right? So kubectl run pod name, I will give nginx-pod, and the image which I want to use is nginx. So a pod get created and its name is nginx-pod. Now ultimately what I have done, I have deployed my application, because Docker image is what? It is your uh, application which you want to deploy as a container or as a pod. So earlier when I executed in the Docker create a container, so at that time it was created by the Docker itself. But now I am using the Kubernetes, and in the Kubernetes I am saying that create a pod with the image. Now pod and container both get created. Now, how do you know to list the pods? Okay, so what I'll do, kubectl get pods. So it will list all the pods. Now, see, it is saying this is my pod name. 1 out of 1 means this one indicates that how many containers you are having in the pod. So I'm having only one container, right? And first one indicates that how many are in the ready state, means they are in the readiness means something they can now accept the request. Okay, so they are ready to accept the request for container point of view. So it is ready state. Status is running. Currently it is running. So there are different status. There are, and that we will also see time to time. But let me talk about some of the status. One status is running. So running means your pod is up and running. Okay, pod is up and running. Second is pending. So when we talk about pending, so initially, actually this is the initial state. So initially it is looking for the worker node where it is to be created. This pod is to be created. So in that case, it is basically looking for those worker nodes. So initially your pod is in the pending state. Then it goes into the container creating. For example, it found that I need to be created. Who will decide that where a pod is to be created? In control plane or master node, there is a scheduler. So scheduler is the one who is basically creates the pod on a particular worker node. So that will be decided by the scheduler. Okay. So we will also see that how we can create the um, pod specifically on a particular worker node. That comes later. Okay. But the scheduler is the component in the control plane who will decide that uh, where a pod is to be created. Okay. So first pending, then container creating. So then on that particular um, worker node, when the container is started creating, right? So that is called the container creating. Now, after that, the container can be created successfully and in the running state, or it could be in the failed state. So running means like our container is in the running state. Yesterday means or in the in some cases what we have seen that container is in the creating state all the time. So we need to see that why it is not getting created. So there is a describe command. With the describe command we can see that if there is a problem in creating the container, what is the problem. So according to that um, we need to take the steps to 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 rectify that error. Okay. So these are different states. Number one, pending to find the worker node. Number two, create the container. Number three, it is in the running state or the failed state. Okay. And failing can be because of any reason your image is not correct, or there is no sufficient memory or CPU on the on that worker node. Could be any reason. Okay. So no. So when I talk about the uh, uh, when I talk about the states or status of pod. Okay. So status of pod is pending, then container creating, and then running or failed. Okay. This is pod lifecycle. Now, next thing is that whenever you create a pod, okay, so whenever you create the pod, there are many properties are attached to the pod. So here what I have done, I have given only two properties, right? Name of the pod and the image. But there are hundreds of other properties are automatically get attached. And to see those properties, we can use kubectl get pod and the pod name, which is nginx-pod. Okay, if you want to find a particular pod, get pod and the pod name, and then -o YAML, or you can use -o JSON in whichever format you want to see. YAML is more, mostly we use YAML only. So now what I'll do here, kubectl get nodes, get pods. Okay, and my pod name is nginx-pod -o YAML. So here you can see there are so many properties are here, right? So you can see that this is basically a YAML file, and this YAML file we can use for our manifest point of view also. So here you can see that pod, and these are other properties, right? Label is the one which we use, namespace, and there are many properties. Not all the properties we will discuss, but yes, whatever is required, time to time we will discuss those properties. Right? Same way, if you want to see this in the JSON format, so you simply say JSON. Right? So same thing, but now it is in the JSON format. Right? Okay. Now, whenever if you want to edit the pod at runtime with Kubernetes command, then use kubectl edit command. Edit and your pod name. For example, I want to edit some property. Kubectl and edit, and then the kubectl edit and pod name is nginx-pod. Right. So what it will do now, it is opened in the form of VI editor, same YAML properties which we have seen with the get command. So same thing, but now we can modify it. Now this is a VI editor. So now what I'm doing, I'm just changing something here. I will say label, I will change. So what happened? Okay, something wrong I'm doing. Oh, it is not working. Something wrong. Let me come out of this. Okay, kubectl edit pod and the pod name nginx-pod. Okay, and what I'm doing, it is not taking. What's wrong with this? Okay, somehow it is not taking my characters. Let me just go to my, this is master node. Let me go directly to the GUI and see whether there is any problem. Maybe I need to update Vim, looks like. I'll say apt update vi editor. Update command takes no argument. Oh, sorry, apt update. I think vi editor is not installed. That's why. I'll check that one. Because this kind of problem occurs when your vi editor is not properly installed. Now see, after fixing that error, my CPU utilization is very, it is okay. I did not increase the number of CPUs also. Right. Now I will say apt install Vim. Okay. You want to install? Yes. Oh, so it was missing. All right, so this is installed. Let me try now again, that one. Yeah, now it is good. So now, for example, I want to make some changes here. So I'll say nginx-pod 1, right? So I will save this. Right. So this is saved. Now, if I run the command kubectl get in the form of YAML, and I will grab the pod 1, right? Pod 1 was there. Right? See, it is changed. Or if you want to see complete detail, so you can mention the only without grep command, and you can see that change happened or not in the label. Okay, so this way we can edit the pod. Now, next question is that can we replace the Docker image for a pod? Can we replace? The answer is yes. So now, will it change the pod name? The answer is no. Same pod, but we can modify that image. Okay, what it will do? So it will remove the existing container and create a new container with new Docker image. Okay, so what it will do? It will means we in the container we cannot do that in Docker container. If you want to replace the image, you need to delete the container and you need to create a new container. But here in the pod, we can modify. What we can do, we can update the Docker image. And when we are updating the Docker image, then what will happen? It will delete the existing container and then it will create a new container. Okay. So when the container is replaced, then the pod get restarted. Okay. So first we will see how to go inside the container. Then we will see how to update the Docker image. Okay. So let's first find that where the pod is running. See, I have created a pod. Pod will be created on some worker node, right? Which worker node I want to see? So kubectl get pods. Okay, and you can use -o wide option. Okay. Now here you can see this is my pod IP address. So every pod is having the IP address, and see currently it is running on worker 1. It is running here on this machine, right? And now how this IP address is assigned? So if you remember, I have discussed that earlier with the pod network plugin, we can do that. Now here you can see when I have created my master node, right, in this step, here I had given pod network CIDR range, which is 10.244.0.0/16. So it means this particular pod will be under this CIDR range only. So 10.244 plus 0 plus dot 0/16, and this number is random. So, but it will be in that range only. Okay, so right. So the pod get created. Pod has an IP address. Pod get created on worker node 1. As I mentioned, we will see later that how the pod will be created on a specific worker node, right? But at this moment, scheduler has decided put this pod on the worker node 1. Okay. Now, what I want to do, let me see if I can update the image. Now, let us update the image of the pod or container. So now we have created, if I say kubectl and get pod, and the pod name is nginx-pod. Okay, get pod nginx-pod, and if I say grep and -I ignore, I want to see the image. Okay, get pod -o YAML. Right. So here you can see I'm using Docker image, which is nginx. Okay, now if I say kubectl get pods, and my pod is in the running state, and if I say -o wide, I will see some more. I'll see some more cases, especially this. Now, if you are having this, if I say curl and this IP address, okay, So I'm supposed to get the nginx output. Okay, but because my looks like my pod is not reachable, looks like there is something virtual box kind of thing. Some port is to be opened. I'll check that one. Okay, let me just see. Is this because of some port issue? No, this happens exec command. Kubelet. Okay, let me check that kubelet is running here. Systemctl status kubelet service. Yeah, so that is fine. So this is fine. Not sure where exactly is the issue, right? So let me see if I can update the, see when I run this command curl, say an example, if I go into my worker node 1 and if I run this command, see I'm getting the nginx response, right? So somehow master node is not able to communicate to the worker node, but on worker node, I have taken the pod IP address and see I'm able to go inside the container and I can see the output. Okay, right. Now I want to update this Docker image and I want to see what is basically getting updated and what is not getting updated, right? So if I say kubectl and set image, so this command you can use kubectl set image of my pod. Which pod? nginx-pod. So by default, the container name is same as the pod name. We can check that also with the help of the kubectl get pod minus o YAML container name. Okay. So if I say set image for my container, which is nginx pod container, and I want to change the image to Tomcat. From server not found pod Tom. Okay. Kubectl set image pod nginx pod and the container name equals to, okay, so the image is updated. So now let me see. So what are the changes will happen? Number one, pod will be restarted. Second, nothing else. The port number, if because Tomcat runs at port number 8080. So that is for the Docker image. And let us see that. Now, if I say kubectl get pods minus o wide, so currently it is running. Okay, let us see whether it is updated or not. So far looks like it is not updated because my container is to be, or my pod is to be restarted. Okay, image is updated. Image is updated. So if I go here, now if I say curl, so this will not work. No, it is running at port number 8080. See, this is updated. Now let us see why the pod is not restarted. Kubectl get pods. Yeah, it is restarted, right? Because whenever you are updating the Docker image, so basically what you are doing, you are deleting the container. So when you are deleting the container, then the pod is automatically get restarted because it is saying, okay, something went wrong into that container or that container does not exist. A new container get created. So see, container is replaced, but the pod properties are same. Okay, only that restart is only the restart thing is updated. Do you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, let me give 1 second. So now, right. So now my container is replaced and new container got created, and my pod name and everything remains same. Okay. So set image command is basically updating the image of the container. Now, next thing is that I want to delete the container. I want to see the events, okay, to check the events related to Kubernetes pod. I want to see what are the events, or I want to see some, not only the events, but there are some other properties like which we see in the get pod command -o YAML. Some of the properties which are commonly required. In get pod, you get everything, right? But here, I don't want everything. I want some commonly used properties, but plus events. Events means how my pod get created, right? What is the uh, Docker, means how the Docker image is pulled, how the Docker image is creating the container, what are the container names, etc. So what I will do here, I will say kubectl and describe pod and the pod name, which is nginx-pod, right? So here you can see that, right. So here you can see these are the events. Initially what happens, successfully assign the nginx-pod to the worker node 1. Specification, pulling the Docker image, which is the nginx image, and then successfully pull the image in these many seconds. Okay. When we have updated the Docker image to Tomcat, then it is also mentioning here that this is the Docker image which is changed to Tomcat. Container is created. Pull the image, container is started. So there is no issue, right? So in worker node 1 also we can see this is the Tomcat output only. Earlier it was nginx. There are some more properties, as I mentioned, you can see here. You can see the container name, like container name is nginx-pod. This is the container ID. As I mentioned, the by default container name and the pod name is same, right? So now this is the container ID. This is the image. This is the image ID. Port number we have not mentioned. So that's why there is no port number. And now here you can see label current state, it is in the running state. This is the IP address of the pod. This is the IP address of where it is basically get created. Like it got created on worker node 1, and this is the IP address of worker node 1. This is the issue. This is the issue. It should be 192. Okay, got it. So actually, I have used two adapters here. If I say IP address, so I have two adapters. I need to, maybe it is not talking to this adapter. That's why exec command is not working properly. But I will check that offline, that why it is not. It is taking this. This is also fine because if, okay, this is fine. So it is taking this worker node 1 IP address, right? So this is the describe command. In the describe command, you can see the complete detailed runtime properties and what are the things which basically which basically get executed inside the pod, right? Last state also it is showing it was terminated because a new pod get created, right? So when the new pod get created, so it was in the terminated state, right? Now, if you want to delete the pod, delete the pod, then the command is kubectl delete pod and the pod name. So my pod name is nginx-pod. So it will delete the pod, it will delete the container, right? So everything get deleted, mean to say. So now we have seen how to create the pod. We have seen how to see the properties with the get command. We have seen that how to inspect the pod. For troubleshooting, you just go to the events and see what are the issues. If it is pod related issues, you can see in the events. And next is that we can delete the pod. We can edit the pod. We can delete the pod. Is it clear up till here?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now what we will do, this is one way. Second way is that we can create the manifest files. Okay. So we can create the manifest files also. Manifest files are the YAML files. Okay. So you can create in JSON, but everyone is creating in YAML only. So this is the second way to write the script into the, this is the second way to create the resources in the Kubernetes by using this script, and that script is called the YAML script. No? Writing a YAML script is very challenging because it is having a lot of indentation alignment problems, plus we need to remember so many reserved words. So that is why when you take the exam in for Kubernetes, like CKD, CKA, CKS, so these are open book exam. So for syntax point of view, what you can do, you can use the Kubernetes documentation. So let us see what is Kubernetes documentation and how we can create the resources with that. So I will go here and I will say Kubernetes documentation. Okay, so I will go to the Kubernetes documentation. This is the official documentation. You can come over here and you can search for example, I am searching for pod. Okay, so this is the pod. Go to the pods, and here you will see complete definition and explanation for the pod. And here you can see there is a YAML file. So what I will do, I will copy this YAML file. I need not to use much my mind, and I will say nano, and what I'll do, I will create a directory. I will create a directory called manifest so that I can keep my files there. So I will say cd and manifest. Okay, and now here I will create a file called pod.yaml. Okay, you can give any name. Extension should be YAML, and I will put that code here. Now what this code is doing, it is creating a pod, and that pod name is nginx. So I will just change the name. So whatever changes are required, you make those changes. I'm changing the name to nginx-pod, and it is using a specific version. I want to use nginx. Okay, so this is my code, and I want to create a pod by using this definition. Okay, what I have done, I have copied it from the Kubernetes documentation. Whatever the changes are required, I have done those changes. I did not remember the syntax and everything, and I'm going to save this. So this is my file. Now to create a resource like pod from the manifest file, we use create -f, apply -f, and delete -f commands. So create -f to create a new resource. For example, I want to create a new resource. Apply means update. Means create or update. And delete means delete that resource. Okay. So let us do. So now if I say kubectl get pods, I don't have any pod because I have deleted that one. Now I want to create a pod by using this YAML file. So I'll say kubectl create -f pod.yaml file. So pod get created. Now if I say kubectl and get pods, so you can see, yes, my pod get created. See, similar way. Now this time I have used the YAML file. Okay. Now if you want to make any change, now I will go to this particular file, which is the pod.yaml file. I will make some change. For example, I want to here we don't make. I will add something called labels. Okay, so I will add it here, labels, right? And here I will say name equals to or app equals to web app. Okay, I'm writing this. So if you see now kubectl, if I say describe pod nginx, I did not apply that change so far. So now if I go nginx, right? So if you see here, the label, these are properties of my pod. So here you can see label is none. Now I will apply that change. Now I will say kubectl. So I'm modifying, okay? So I will say kubectl apply -f and my file name is pod.yaml. Okay, so this warning you can ignore, but now my pod is configured, right? Now if I check again, describe command, and now here you can see label is set to, so it means my pod get updated. Okay, so app equals to web app. Okay, so this is the IP address of my pod. So apply command. Now if you want to delete the pod, you can use the previous command also, like means earlier command which we have discussed to delete the pod, kubectl delete pod name, or you can also use kubectl delete -f and pod.yaml. So it will go and check what you have created in this YAML file. So kind is pod and pod name, it will delete that pod. Now if I say kubectl and get pods, so you can see no resource found. So this is one way to create the pod by using YAML file. Is it clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Maybe you need to practice this. Okay, so
Can you share the command, history command?
I will share all the commands and file also. Now next is, this is one way, but this is also fine, but there are some other ways. Now you can also create the manifest file by using kubectl commands. Okay, so but the resource should have the create command. Like to create the um, uh, pod, we have kubectl run command. Okay, so If we are having a create command for the resource means further we will see services, deployment, etc. So if we are having the if we are having create command for that resource, then we can create the YAML file from command itself. So the command is, now we don't have any resource. So I want to create one more YAML file. So I'll say kubectl and run. For example, I want to create a pod. Pod name is pod1 with the image nginx. If I run this command, it will create the pod, but I want to create a YAML file so that I can share with others. I can do a version control of that. So now I will write here ---- dry run equals to client. Okay, -o YAML. When you run this command, it will create a YAML file for you, but it has so many maybe something which you don't want, like resources you don't want, DNS policy. At this moment, we don't need it. So then you can modify that one. So here I have printed the output on my screen, but I want that this output should go to my sum file. So I will set this and greater than, I will just give pod1.yaml file. Okay, now this time a file get created, which is pod1.yaml file. Okay. Now I want to remove the things which I don't need. So what I will do, I will go vi and pod1.yaml file, and I will remove these things which are not required. For now, it is not required. So this is my simple this Kubernetes manifest file, and what I will do, I will save this. Now I will say kubectl and create -f pod1.yaml file. Now pod get created. See, this time I did not refer to the Kubernetes documentation. I have created through command this manifest file. If I say kubectl get pods, so you can see, yes, pod1 get created. Right. So this is the second way to create the manifest file. Now I'll say kubectl delete -f pod1. I'm deleting this pod. Third way is that you need to have Visual Studio Code, right? So you can have the Visual Studio Code. Let me go to my Ubuntu machine. Right. Now let me see whether I have Visual Studio Code here. Visual is not there. VS Code. Or what we can do, we can install the Visual Studio Code on our system. Or you can do it on your Windows system also, install the Visual Studio Code. Or we can go to the website and we can say install VS Code on Linux or Ubuntu. Right, we'll go to this website, right, and Debian package. Okay, so okay, so it is okay. Let me, because I already have on my Windows, let me open in the Windows. So when you are having your Visual Studio Code, right? So what you need to do, you just need to add a extension. So you need to go to the extensions, and you can search for extension, which is Kubernetes extension. So Kubernetes from Microsoft, okay? take this one and install this extension. Once this extension is installed, then what you can do, you can create, or let me create a folder. This is already existing folder. So I will go to my E drive and I will create a folder and I will name it as I'll create a folder called manifest. And I will open this folder into my Visual Studio Code. Right. So once you have that extension, let me create a file called my app. I'll call it as my app.yaml file. Extension should be YAML. Now, here what I can do, I can simply say pod. Right. See, it is saying Kubernetes pod. Press enter. See, it has created the script for you. So now you can, change, like your pod name is my app pod, right? Label, this is optional if you want to remove. Resources we will discuss later. Container port also we will discuss later, right? So now my image name will be nginx image. So now I will copy this, okay? And what I will do, I will go here and I will say nano and my app pod.yaml. Now I will save this kubectl and create minus my app pod.yaml. So pod get created. If I say kubectl get pod, so this way also. So this is the third way. First way, Kubernetes documentation. Second, through command. Third, by using Visual Studio Code. Okay. So in this case, you need not to remember the syntax of the script. You need not to remember alignment. So yeah, so in that case, Kubernetes developer job is easy. Okay, even though you are having a lot of these sources, with the help of that you can create your YAML file. But I always recommend that you need to know at least few lines or at least how to create a basic pod. Because if you have the knowledge of that, how to create a basic pod, then you can, you know, you can understand the scripts. At this moment, maybe you are not able to understand the script, but once you have that basic or foundation knowledge, then it will be easy for you to understand the other scripts, which maybe you can create by using those sources, Visual Studio Code or Kubernetes documentation. But you need to if something is required to change, so those things um, you can do it uh, uh, by understanding that script. So let me try to explain that very common code which we write. Now I will delete this also. kubectl delete -f and my app pod.yaml. So this is also getting deleted. Now let me open the notepad. Right. So here I will say language, which is YAML. So there are four main components: API version, kind, metadata, and specification. So these are the four main components when you define the pod. Now API version is hard coded. I will share that what are the API codes, but these are hard coded for each and every type of resource. For example, uh, for pod, it is V1. For for deployment, it is different, right? So now kind means what you want to create. I want to create the pod, right? I want to create the pod. So kind is pod. When you are writing kind, first letter should be capital of each word. For example, you are creating replication controller. Then you need to say replication R capital, controller C capital, replica set R capital, S capital. Okay. So I'm creating a pod, right? Metadata is what are the properties like name of the pod. So name of the pod, for example, this is, I'll say new pod. Okay. Then this is required, name is required. There is one more property which is called labels. So labels it's a, some custom properties if we are defining for pod. But this label will be practically, we will see when we will start talking about the replication. So here I'll say label, and label is, for example, I will call it app equals to nginx app. Okay, some my own key value pair. Now in the specification, you need to define the containers. So I'm saying I have containers. So name of the container is, you can give anything, say C1, and the which Docker image you want to use. I want to use the Docker image, which is nginx. Okay, so I will copy this manifest file and I will go here and I will say nano and new pod dot YAML file, and I will paste that code here. Okay, do you understand these 10 lines? And that
Yes, sir.
you need to write by your own without seeing this. Maybe you can practice one time, two times, 10 times, but you should be able to write these 10 lines. Then it will be very easy to understand the replication, very easy to understand deployment, because these 10 lines will be used everywhere. Okay, so you should be able to write these lines. You should be able to understand that what are these 10 lines means. So now let me save this. Now I will say kubectl and create -f new pod.yml file. Oh, something wrong. One second. Okay, one thing wrong. Name should be small letter all the time, not capital. Now let me run it again. Now pod get created. Kubectl get pods. So you can see my pod get created, which is nginx-pod. Other properties are same, delete, and this get and edit, whatever means we have discussed, you can apply. So it does not matter that how this pod get created, whether it is created by using YAML file or by using command. So ultimately it get created. After that, whatever the commands you want to run, you can run. Now script purpose is that we can version control it, and whenever you are using the CI/CD pipeline, so their YAML file is basically required, right? So in the YAML file, if you are having the YAML file, then it will be easy for the automation point of view. Is it clear? So let us do one thing. Let's wind up here for today, right? And let me just share the history of this command with you. We have executed all these commands. Let me share it on the chat window. Did you get it?
Yes, sir. See.
Okay, good, good. Let me share those files also. So I will say tail minus. So these are the YAML files. Take this YAML file also. So tomorrow we will connect. You want to connect tomorrow or not?
So tomorrow I'll do revision.
Okay, so tomorrow you want to take a break. Okay, so please do this before coming to the next
Yes.
lectures. Then it will be very easy for you to understand the further concepts.
Sure, sir.
All right, see you on Monday then. Okay.
Sure, sir. Same time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.